To this day, Bergsonism has directly or indirectly fueled theories of art and film, as the examples of André Bazin and Gilles Deleuze famously illustrate. Therefore, it ought to prove interesting to return to the founding principles of this philosophy and to investigate its ties to a certain idea of cinema, one often cast aside in order to better defend Bergsonism. Bergson himself spoke of cinema not so much because he readily admitted to attending movie theaters in an oft-quoted interview, nor because, in Creative Evolution, he wrote about the Lumière cinématographe, a machine that was his contemporary, nor even because he was to turn it into a metaphor of scientific thought. Rather, he talked about cinema because he turned the cinematograph into a theoretical model. Indeed, Bergson engaged with the cinema by referencing this device, appareil, belonging to the technology of film, and by offering an analysis of its dispositive, all the while developing a particular conception of it. There is a famous passage in the fourth chapter of Creative Evolution where Bergson presents the cinematograph, dialectically connecting his philosophy and thought to the new medium. But exactly what is the status of Bergson's cinematograph for the historian of cinema? How can it be grasped and known for cinema studies beyond the mere mention of it or the acknowledgement and prestige which philosophy as a discipline may bring to it? One way to acquire historical knowledge of Bergson's cinematograph is through discourse analysis. Indeed, this dispositive can be said to function inasmuch as it assumes a specific role within Bergsonian discourse, where it is associated a battery of concepts and a number of other dispositives, and because its very description contributes to the production of meaning. In short, it can be redeployed as a dispositive by tailing an epistemological approach. Bergson's own cinematograph, like the other cinematographs or machines and dispositives found in traditional film histories, features a mechanical element, or machinery, that relies on a device. This is not necessarily the case for all viewing dispositives, however. The exhibition of a painting in a museum, for instance, does not require a device. In Bergson, though, the technical nature of the cinematograph is evident. Not that the technical fact should be reduced to the mechanical or the mechanistic. Rather, we should recognize, with Jacques Ellul, that the machine provides the ideal toward which technique strives. End quote. Of course, the devices of the machine age elicited all sorts of remarks and debates as a subject impassioned both fierce advocates and staunch opponents. The cinematograph was perceived as an emblematic machine of modernity on the eve of the 20th century, just as the train, with which it was often associated, had come to embody 19th century industry. Histories of cinema, and by cinema I also mean what is often called pre-cinema, usually devote much space to technical issues and problems when discussing the medium's early years. For the most part, these are histories of devices, inventions, and patents, outright technical histories. This attitude changes from the moment the history of cinema becomes a history of films, and cinema institutionalizes itself. Suddenly, technical considerations become embedded in, and even dependent on, aesthetic problems, definitions of works, authors, styles, schools, etc. But even then, history simply sheds a different light upon the cinema, since the technical fact remains at the heart of the larger ensemble that forms the cinematographic dispositive. What I call the technical fact determines both Bergson's dispositive and the various dispositives of film historians. However, this technical fact acquires a specific value in the work of the French philosopher. The critique of science advanced by Bergson through his theory of knowledge is integral to the context of mechanization. For Bergson, the cinematograph stands for the limits of science. It is the model for its operations, which do not allow access to real duration as grasped by intuition. Bergson therefore turns to the cinematographic machine, showing in the process that he too can draw on the technical means of his time. Nonetheless, he assigns to this cinematograph a rather peculiar finality relative to his philosophical argument. The status of the technical aspect of the cinematographic dispositive in Bergson's discourse warrants elucidation. Like the various dispositives of film historians, it too demands that we question its technicité. This is a required detour if we are to delineate the status of Bergson's dispositive for the film historian. However, in order to investigate the technical being of a discursive object, to observe the technicity of this specific discursive dispositive, one must first elucidate the relations that exist between the technical and the discursive, since they manifest themselves well beyond the technical history of cinema. Only then can we hope to grasp, in a concrete manner, the process of discursive transmutation that plays out in Bergson.